It always starts the same way. A random thought, a strange post, a video you weren't even looking for. You click once, then twice, and before you realize it, you've gone too far to stop. That's what a rabbit hole is. It doesn't grab you all at once, it pulls you in slowly, layer by layer, until hours have passed and you're not even sure how you got there. One mystery leads to another, one theory connects to the next, and suddenly you're seeing the world a little bit differently, wondering what's real and what's hidden. Welcome to the Rabbit Hole Iceberg, a breakdown of how deep things can go when you start to look too closely. I made this iceberg myself, and the top layer starts simple enough and innocent enough. But the deeper we go, the stranger, the darker, and more disturbing the rabbit holes become. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and join our Patreon for early access to every single video and much, much more. And without further ado, let's get into the Rabbit Hole Iceberg. And before we move on to the next entry, I have to give a shout out to FlexiSpot. If you spend as much time at your desk as I do, you know when your setup just isn't cutting it. It's been time for an upgrade, so I rebuilt my entire workplace. And now I actually look forward to sitting down for hours thanks to the FlexiSpot E7 Pro standing desk and the C7 Max ergonomic chair. And today, I'm going to show you why they're both absolute game changers. Sitting all day wrecks your posture and kills productivity. A standing desk keeps you moving, fits any height, and replaces that unstable old desk we've all suffered with. This is the FlexiSpot E7 Pro, and it's literally built like a tank. It has a 440-pound static weight capacity, a dual-motor 3-stage frame, and one of the widest height ranges I've ever seen, from 25 inches all the way up to 50.6 inches. And check this out, even at full height, it doesn't budge, even with a ton of weight on it. No wobble when typing, no shake when raising or lowering it, even with gear on top. To prove how strong it is, the E7 Pro can literally support hundreds of pounds without flexing. I mean, it's actually astonishing. One desk, multiple uses, workstation, filming platform, gaming setup, even a kid's study desk. The height range makes it crazy versatile. And now let's talk about chairs. Most people sit 6 to 12 hours a day, and a bad chair ruins your back. Mine was uncomfortable, unstable, and honestly, embarrassing, especially considering I sit down and record for a living. So I switched to the FlexiSpot C7 Max, and it blows every other ergonomic chair I've tried out of the water. First, the 3D adjustable headrest. You can tilt it, raise it, lower it, whatever angle works for long work sessions. And the entire backrest adjusts, so the chair literally fits your height instead of the other way around. And this part is genius. Instead of traditional lumbar-only support, it focuses on the sacrum, which automatically supports both lumbar and sacrum together. Way more ergonomic. And you can adjust the seat depth, and the cushion uses a 0.2-inch latex layer with memory foam, so it's soft but supportive, even for 12-hour days. And the 5D armrest adjusts in every direction, perfect for typing or gaming. From long recording sessions to gaming at night, the C7 Max has made a massive difference. And with a 10-year warranty and a 30-day risk-free return, it's an easy chair to recommend. And right now, FlexiSpot's Black Friday sale is insane. Up to 80% off on desks and up to 60% off site-wide. Plus extra discounts for students, teachers, medical workers, and more. If you want the E7 Pro, use my code YTE730 for $30 off. And for the C7 Max chair, use C730 for another $30 off. Check out FlexiSpot.com and let me know if you pick one up. This upgrade transformed my setup, and it'll do the same for yours. And now, let's get back into it. Starting off with Tier 1, and the first entry being the glitter conspiracy. We love shiny things. It's in our DNA. Sparkling gemstones, lustrous diamonds, glinting silver spoons. When something shimmers or sparkles, we tend to gravitate towards it. That's because humans have a prehistoric instinct to seek out water, the lifeblood that keeps us marching, day by day. We're hardwired to find it by any means necessary. That's why those Coca-Cola ads are so tantalizing. Glistening beads of condensation sliding down a tall glass. It's attractive. Needless to say, it's very important to us. So much so that in this paragraph alone, I've used 6 synonyms to describe it. 6 out of the 20 or so words we've created to describe one glittering phenomena. On December 21st, 2018, author Katie Weaver decided to investigate a relatively unremarkable industry whose entire purpose is to make everything glitter. In the days before Christmas, the New York Times published her article titled, "What is Glitter? A Strange Journey to the Glitter Factory." In it, we get a brief history of glitter, from the 20th century creation of what we know today as an arts and craft material, its popularity during Christmas time in the 1940s, and its mysterious production in the modern day. The focus of the article is on one company, GlitterX, one of 2 companies that predominantly manufacture glitter in the United States, and their refusal to allow her a tour of their factory. He also did not want me to visit his glitter factory. The jovial Mr. Shetty told me over the phone that people have no idea of the scientific knowledge required to produce glitter. That GlitterX glitter making technology is some of the most advanced in the world, that people don't believe how complicated it is, that he would not allow me to see the glitter being made, that he would not allow me to hear glitter being made, that I could not even be in the same wing of the building as the room in which glitter was being made under any circumstance. That even GlitterX's clients are not permitted to see their glitter being made, that he would not reveal the identities of GlitterX's clients. And that, fine. I was welcome to come down to GlitterX headquarters to learn more about what I could not learn about in person. No one, and I mean no one, expected this much secrecy around something like glitter. Her curiosity piqued, and like any persistent journalist, she eventually was allowed a minimally invasive tour, which I'd like to add, they did not want to give her. As the article progresses, she tells us some of the lesser-known uses of glitter: anti-counterfeit protection, tracking animals by putting it in their food, FBI cataloging. She tells us about its complicated manufacturing process, which includes evaporating aluminum, which I didn't even know was possible, but sure, the owner of the company wasn't lying, I guess. They employ very complicated methods for creating their glitter, but a very big question remained. Why the secrecy? Why was it like pulling teeth trying to get a tour? And who were these mysterious buyers? So she asked about their biggest customer. Who is it? Mr. Shetty, then CEO of the company, said that, trade secrets aside, confidentiality is a top-down requirement from clients. Companies do not want others in their industry to know what glitters are in their products, to prevent competitors from making identical formulations. When I asked Miss Dyer, a GlitterX representative, if she could tell me which industry served as GlitterX's biggest market, her answer was instant. No. I absolutely know that I can't. And you would never guess it. Let's just leave it at that. They don't want anyone to know that it's glitter. And from that point on, it was open season on GlitterX. Everyone wanted to know, who the fuck was secretly buying glitter? And what were they doing with it? When I first found out about the newly coined glitter conspiracy, it was from TikTok, and I figured it had something to do with food. Somehow, for some reason, it might be ending up in our food products. Given the secretive nature of the company and the weird applications listed in the article, glitter could be inside our cucumbers, for all I know. And the food theory was only one of several popular theories. Boat finish was a common answer, something to add a sheen to the outside of a boat's protective paint layer. But this just doesn't make sense to me. Why would they be so secretive about boat paint? Who cares about boat paint? I carry a similar sentiment for other theories like quartz countertops, engineered stone, and concrete additives. Who in their right mind would go, my glitter has concrete in it, I'm not buying concrete again? Theories like currency and military applications make a little more sense to me. But then again, there's no real reason it makes more sense, because all of this is speculation. We know next to nothing about who's buying the glitter, and the company isn't telling us anytime soon, so all of the theories are just as good as any other. Regardless, it's a very fun rabbit hole to dive into. Though, it is a little unnerving wondering, who is buying all of this glitter? And what are they up to? Cave exploring. If you're watching this video, it's likely you've heard of the Nutty Putty Cave incident. On November 24th, 2009, cave explorer John Jones and his brother Josh joined a small group of spelunkers on an expedition to the now infamous cave. It had just been reopened after a long hiatus, as other cavers had gotten trapped over the years, and all of them required rescue, which was expensive. So, John and his brother entered the passage called the Birth Canal, a narrow but maneuverable section of the cave, and shortly after, John splits off. He thought he was headed down a safe passage. Instead, he was headed for what was essentially a crack in the ground, a fissure, just big enough to fit him, and it led nowhere. He believed in order to get to the other side, he had to squeeze himself in, upside down, head first. At 10 a.m., he became trapped. His companions called for help, and rescuers arrived shortly after. What followed was a 20-hour extraction in a passage so narrow it could barely be reached. They attempted to pull him out by his feet, but his knees were locked in such a way that made it impossible to remove him. Instead, they attempted to widen the stone beneath him with drills and hammers. For 20 hours, they chipped away at the rock, and although they made progress, John couldn't survive being upside down for almost an entire day. He died in that narrow fissure. Recovering his body would be too much of a risk, so they left him and sealed the entrance with concrete. Today, the Nutty Putty Cave serves as his final resting place. John Jones, forever frozen in time, doing the thing he loved, exploring caves. There have been hundreds of videos created about John Jones in the Nutty Putty Cave, and for good reason. These types of videos, cave exploration videos, touch on another kind of basic human instinct: fear. Fear of confinement, claustrophobia, being trapped and unable to move. And when you follow that instinct, there's no limit to how deep you can go. For instance, the 1959 case of Neil Moss, who went down into an unexplored shaft of the Peak Cavern in Derbyshire, England, and became stuck. For 2 days, he remained in the cave, alive more than 1,000 feet from the entrance and unable to be saved. His body was left at the site after dying. Or the death of Sheik Exley, one of the pioneers of cave diving. This man single-handedly standardized multiple safety protocols for divers exploring caves, and methods for saving their lives in the event that serious issues occur. He was trying to set a depth record at the Zakatone sinkhole when something went wrong with his oxygen. Supposedly, he was taken by nitrogen poisoning, though we'll never know for sure what killed him. These are just a few examples of the hundreds of cases that involve caving, and falling down this rabbit hole can take more than a couple days off your calendar. The Denver Airport. In 1989, Denver, Colorado had a problem. The Stapleton International Airport, located about 40 minutes from the heart of Denver, was in need of a redevelopment. Serious redevelopment. Something to the tune of a couple $2 billion worth, to fix the congestion issues and its close proximity to urban neighborhoods. So the local government came up with a simple solution: tear the old one down and build a new one somewhere else. And so they did. Construction on the replacement airport finished in 1995, and people were excited to see all of the new bells and whistles of the brand new Denver International Airport. Its iconic peaked roof, inspired by Native American teepees in the nearby Rocky Mountains, a state-of-the-art people mover, which is a rail system for transporting passengers and luggage between terminals, an automated baggage handling system, and much, much more. Altogether, it cost the taxpayer a measly $4.8 billion, and nobody batted an eye. Except they did. On what? Asked the taxpayer, and right they were to ask. That's a lot of money for a roof made of Teflon and fiberglass. The project ended up being $2 billion over budget, nearly 2 times the original price estimate. So, what was going on? Why was it so ridiculously underestimated? Where was all the money going? Well, they claim that the delays and high price tag were consequences of that state-of-the-art technology we talked about. Thousands of yards of underground rails and electronic baggage tunnels, but some began speculating that another factor might be at play. They started creating their own theories, and some of these theories could cover an entire video alone, but we'll touch on a few here that I find really interesting. First up, the art. There are tons of art pieces found across the airport. Paintings, murals, sculptures. The one that's incited the most confusion is the 32-foot tall cobalt statue of a stallion nicknamed Blucifer, which is weird at best. With its blue coat, bulging veins, a black mane, and glowing red eyes, the sculpture has an evil air to it. I mean, look at this thing. It's nightmare fuel. I grew up in Denver, and every single time I drove past that when I was a kid, it always gave me the chills. It really does have an ominous feeling to it when you see it in real life. And people believe this statue is a harbinger of the apocalypse, and rumors of its evil endowment began early in construction, when a piece of the statue fatally injured its creator, Luis Jimenez. Inside the terminals, there are several artworks that depict war, gas masks, soldiers, children uniting for peace, Masonic imagery, and all of this together led inquisitive minds to start thinking. Maybe the horse was a symbol of the apocalypse. All those secret tunnels under the Denver airport might be the future home for a new world order. Speaking of, our next theory takes place underground, in the tunnels. Down beneath the airport, there are confirmed to be about 2 miles worth of tunnels, maintenance corridors, fuel stores, baggage transport. But with the $5 billion price tag, theorists are more than skeptical about exactly what was built down there, behind the security doors, in the labyrinth of tunnels. If this were some post-apocalyptic bunker disguised as an airport, well, there would be more than just service quarters down there. Maybe there could be bunkers, stores of food, housing for the rich and famous, who would like to retain their comforts in the fiery hellscape soon to come. Other theories include secret government facilities, where they deconstruct alien technology, or even make pacts with Hillary in the rest of her lizard people government. And yeah, that is an actual theory. And yes, it's ridiculous, but when your product arrives 2 years late, $2 billion over budget, and covers an area the size of Minneapolis, people are going to question the how and why, and that's reasonable. Now, do I think there's lizard people living under the Denver airport, preparing for the end of the world? No. Honestly, because if the lizard people are living anywhere, it's probably the White House, not Denver, Colorado. Location, location, location. But is this still a very creepy rabbit hole with a lot of unanswered financial questions? Well, if Blucifer is any measure, I'd say yes. Alright, now onto tier 2, starting off with the cult obsession of the Aryan race. World War II. The conflict reshaped the world as we know it. Its impact on society, country, and culture is unmeasurable. Tens of millions of people were killed, soldiers and civilians alike. Entire cities reduced to rubble, entire populations of people slaughtered, and the most prolific hate group in history orchestrating it all. Now, YouTube does not like it when we bring up the original Darth Vader and his band of hate-mongering stormtroopers, so in order for you to see this video, I will be referring to this infamous coalition of anti-Semitic losers as the Armband Boys. We're all familiar with the atrocities committed by the Armband Boys, but many aren't familiar with all the weird stuff they got up to. For instance, and I'm not calling this weird, it's just odd to think about, the Armband Boys were big proponents for the supernatural. In fact, they took a lot of inspiration from something called the Thule Society, which was a Munich-based esoteric group. Now, what is an esoteric group? Well, essentially, all that means is that they were interested in hidden information. In this case, having to do with myths, rituals, the origins of the Aryan man, ruins, and often supernatural phenomena. The Armband Boys filtered a lot of their belief system from the Thule Society. And when you start to dive into the history of their actions and their beliefs, it gets very dark and very mystical very fast. For instance, the Armband Boys were known to use dowsers, mystics, psychics, and occult practitioners to plan military strategy. One very famous example was German mystic Ludwig Straniach. He was known to divine information from pendulum dowsing, which is where you hang a pendulum over an answer key, or in this case, a map, and otherworldly forces tell you information. He was so good at it, the Armband Boys actually held his family hostage. That's how badly they wanted his supernatural information. They even developed an entire sector of the military dedicated to divination, called the Institute for Occult Warfare. The institute was responsible for the creation of ritual halls where presumably the Armband Boys could employ their mystics to figure out battle plans, find the locations of enemy warships, and sneakily acquire enemy tactics. A lot of these practices are not documented, but we can see the remnants all through the Armband Boys architecture. One of the most prominently cited examples is the Black Sun, installed by Himmler in the North Tower of Wewelsburg Castle, which, after being overtaken in 1934, served as the de facto headquarters for their occult obsessions. Essentially, it was turned into an ideological, spiritual think tank for the Armband Boys. Himmler, believing that the Armband Boys were the spiritual descendants of a long extinct warrior race, wanted somewhere they could pray, or whatever. This was Wewelsburg Castle. To put it another way, they were the sons of King Arthur, and this castle could be their Camelot, so to speak. Down beneath the North Tower, there was a crypt-like chamber built, called the Hall of Supreme Leaders, with 12 stone seats for his top generals, and a black sun-like mosaic on the floor, which has since been removed, and the room was used for supernatural purposes. The Black Sun of Wewelsburg is a prime example of the secretive ritualistic belief system that ran the Armband Party. But what was it used for exactly? What were the rituals employed? What was the end result? Whatever they were up to, the Armband Boys and their occult obsession is definitely disturbing. Kanye West. Kanye West was, at one time, regarded as one of the greatest musicians of our modern day. He took the world by storm in the early 2000s with his incredible skills as a producer, emotional lyrics, refreshing combinations, and an oversaturated genre of music, and a massive library of hits. I mean massive. There was a time you couldn't turn on your radio without encountering Kanye West. Almost overnight, he became a sensation, a superstar. Every album he released was well received, incredibly popular, and got heavy airtime. Year after year, he outperformed the competition. In the words of Uncle Ben, with great superstardom comes great responsibility. But Kanye didn't subscribe to the polished, censored version of the artist that the industry wanted to push. He had an old school approach. Not one opinion was ever filtered, and people respected him for it. He was outspoken, passionate, a total personality. Sometimes he could go viral just for sharing his opinions, like when sharing his opinion on Lady Gaga becoming the creative director of Polaroid.
I like some of the Gaga songs. What the fuck does she know about cameras?
Over the years, we got to know the man behind Kanye West. Who he was as a person, well, that person was a confident, charismatic, cocky SOB, but with the success he'd seen and being admittedly a great talent, it actually seemed more quirky than it did pretentious. He was on top of the world, and he knew it. Who could blame him? He got married to Kim Kardashian in 2014, an A-list personality herself, who had also taken the world by storm, conquering the tabloids for nearly 2 decades. Together, they had the potential to become the next great American power couple, one that could put the likes of Beyonce and Jay-Z to shame. He went into a business deal with Adidas and started a brand called Yeezy, which was a massive, unbelievable success. The brand made hostages out of high fashion. The torn shirts and gummy sneakers were plastered on every headline. Comfortable, reliable, luxury clothing. I was in middle school around this time, and it was nothing short of a renaissance. For the adults listening, I'm sure you saw it too. There was always one 14-year-old boy whose entire personality was dedicated to the Yeezy brand, boasting collections of Yeezy sneakers, and that same kid would be walking down the hallway in a new pair of foam slides, bumping Homecoming on repeat. That was the culture one man created in a little less than a decade. Then things started to change. His personality became more unpredictable. He started dedicating his time to religious music, which isn't exactly odd. I mean, people turn to religion all the time, but it seemed like a paradigm shift. I know many won't agree with me, and rightly so. He always seemed like a cocky person, but there was something different about Kanye. His behavior, what he talked about, he seemed angry, delirious at times, like someone who was using way too many substances or was on the precipice of schizophrenia. He became paranoid, hateful, and then, just as quickly as he'd risen, he fell. Anti-Semitic comments, racist remarks toward black people, reclusiveness, it took a heavy toll on his trajectory, and suddenly, he was famous for an entirely different reason. He was hated in the nation. So what happened? For anyone who's a fan of Kanye West, who had spent the better part of a decade building his empire, it seemed very odd to just blow it up. Just like that. In my opinion, something had to be going on behind the scenes. He never seemed hateful before. Cocky and rude? Yeah. Racist? No. And his detestable actions, not just toward Jewish communities, but the black community, well, it just didn't sit well with me. And many others agreed. From what the public could tell, he just went crazy, seemingly out of nowhere. Then, in May 2025, new information came out about what might have caused Kanye to spiral so hard, so fast, one that would send the media into a tailspin. Kanye West accused his former dentist, Dr. Thomas Connolly, of supplying him with massive amounts of nitrous oxide. And before I go any further, this man looks like a Despicable Me villain, and although not viable in court, I think that should be recognized. Now let's talk about nitros. For those of you who don't know, nitrous oxide, otherwise known as laughing gas, is used in dental surgeries as a sedative. It makes you delirious and euphoric, making it a popular black market party drug. In Atlantic City, for instance, you can find men walking around with armfuls of balloons bigger than your torso, selling them for however much. That's nitrous oxide. It's a common concert scene, and many people enjoy its euphoric properties for recreational use. It's also incredibly addictive, and it turns your brain to mush. Allegedly, his dentist sold him large quantities of nitrous oxide around the same time he started acting erratic, with the intention of purposely getting Kanye addicted so he could steal his money. And ultimately, being so delirious and confused, Kanye ruined his career. That's what I gather from the lawsuit. So what do we think? Is nitrous oxide a likely contributor to the manic, deranged behavior he exhibited? Probably. It actually makes a lot of sense, considering his stark personality change and his mental deterioration. But was this some conspiracy to derail the man's career and steal his riches? Maybe. We'll have to wait and find out. But beyond the speculation, the rise and fall of Kanye West is a harrowing example of how fame can be just as detrimental as it can be beneficial. And a warning for all those recreational drug users out there, just like Kanye West, there are consequences to your vices, and you might not get out of it unscathed. Death Valley. In California, there lies an expanse of desert so hot, so isolated, that travelers are cautioned to bring supplies when traveling through. Over 5,000 square miles of white sands, towering mountains, and blistering sunshine, with the hottest temperature ever recorded on Earth, at 131 degrees Fahrenheit. We're talking about Death Valley, the hottest place on Earth. There are highways built through Death Valley, one of which being Route 190, or the Scenic Byway. Driving along, you can see all of the striking beauty this scarce desert has to offer. Some people even manage to live here, like the 136 residents of Furnace Creek, home of the area's Nation Park Services. There's a hotel, a small store, a restaurant, even a golf course, and this oasis is no small comfort. About 1 million people each year visit Death Valley. Some are just passing through from Nevada, others are out in search of adventure or solitude and want to become acquainted with the stunning landscape. But not everyone who goes into Death Valley comes back out, and not everyone passing through intends on leaving. So naturally, there are a lot of rabbit holes to delve into here. One of the most disturbing places in Death Valley is Barker Ranch. It was originally built as a mining facility and it was used for that purpose into the 1960s. That is, until 1968, when a group of outlaws took up residence in the Stone Refuge, and between its walls planned some of the most terrible crimes committed in recent history. For 2 years, Barker Ranch was home to the Manson family, the infamous cult who committed a series of ritualistic spree killings across California. But it wasn't just a hideout. It became a sort of desert kingdom for him and his following, a place where he could preach his twisted helter-skelter gospel without interruption. By late 1969, after the Tate LaBianca murders, the family retreated fully into Barker Ranch. They scavenged through the old mining roads, stole cars to pillage supplies, and camped out in the canyons. Eventually, after months of police investigations following the many car thefts, the Manson family was largely caught. Then there's the story of the Death Valley Germans, which I was exploring for a couple of hours today, and let me tell you, it runs deep. In 1996, a family of 4 went missing in Death Valley: a father and his girlfriend, and 2 boys, 11 and 4. From the look at things, they had abandoned their car, their wallets, luggage, clothing, and water, and disappeared into the desert. After searching the area for any sign of the family, the police had nothing left to investigate, so the case went cold. Until 15 years later, in 2009, when it was finally solved. Not by police, but by 2 experienced hikers, Tom Mahood and Les Walker, who had finally discovered what truly happened to the Death Valley Germans, and for no other reason than they found the case interesting, and over the course of a couple years, ended up solving it. They actually wrote a series of blog posts on their website about their journey to find out what happened. According to them, the family broke down a couple miles off the path, attempting to take a shortcut through the desert. When their van became stuck, they headed toward the nearest civilization on their map, the China Air Naval Base, but the map portrayed the base to be much closer than it actually was. The family died of dehydration not 2 miles away from where they became stuck. And that's just 2 of the many stories I came across while diving into the Death Valley rabbit hole, and honestly, either one could be considered a rabbit hole if and of itself. With such an arid and inhospitable setting, it's no great shock that all of these stories are very morbid, very sad, or very mysterious. And now onto Tier 3, starting off with They Go Into the Woods. Our next story is similar to the last, but it doesn't take place in just one location. That's the scary part about it. There is plenty to talk about in the Death Valley National Park rabbit hole. But what if it wasn't limited to just one national park? I remember when the Skinwalker became incredibly popular online all of a sudden. I think it was around 2013 or 2014 or whenever it was. And reading up on this rabbit hole, I can understand why. The United States has a ton of national parks, 63 in total, covering 21,000 square miles. For reference, that's about the same size as the country of Rwanda. That's a lot of land. And we're not even limiting ourselves to national parks. We're just talking wooded, secluded areas in general. People have been known to go missing, especially around the Poconos or the Rocky Mountains, under very odd circumstances. Oftentimes, it's just some lady who saw a squirrel and walked too far off the trail. And oftentimes, these people get rescued shortly after. But what about the other side of that coin? What about the people who didn't see a squirrel? I'm obviously joking with that corny line, but still, what about the people who don't get rescued? Well, there's a reason the skinwalker is very popular, and that's because for a very long time in American history, people have been known to disappear in forested areas under very mysterious circumstances. They go into the woods and never come out. I could talk all day about people basically evaporating out of existence when walking through the woods, but that's something for another video. So here is a crazy example I cite regularly. Let's go back to 1969, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. 6-year-old Dennis Martin is out camping with family while the adults were taking a rest. Dennis and a group of older boys decided to scare them. The boys split up and rushed off the trail, planning to circle back and give the adults a fun shock. But when the other boys returned to the trail, Dennis was nowhere to be seen. It had only been a couple of minutes. He couldn't have gone too far. They began calling out his name, asking him to come out. The game was over. Nothing. He simply vanished. Shortly after, storm clouds rolled in, dousing the Smoky Mountains in 3 inches of heavy rainfall, turning all of the dirt trails to mud, obscuring any footprints by the boy. In the morning, park rangers began organizing a search party. Over the coming days, this search party would become the largest in the park's history, at over 1,500 volunteers, but they weren't all experienced trackers. Most of them weren't even familiar with the Smokies. They were a majority of volunteer civilians, with the occasional FBI agent or Green Beret among them. Together, they scoured a 60 square mile area, looking for Dennis, but he was nowhere to be found. The only leads they had were a small shoe print near a creek bed nearby, and the account of a tourist some 5 miles away, who reported seeing a hairy, bear-like man hiding in the bushes, who sprinted off, carrying something red over his shoulder. When Dennis Martin went missing, he was wearing a red t-shirt. It's estimated that about 1,600 people are currently missing in forested areas, though this is a very, very rough guesstimate. The truth is, we don't know everyone that's gone missing, but we do know plenty of cases that are still being investigated because of their strange nature. If you're interested in these types of mysterious disappearances and strange happenings in national parks and want to dig deeper into the rabbit hole, I recommend the book series Missing 411 by David Paldiz. The fact it's even a series just goes to show the overwhelming amounts of odd disappearances that happen in the woods. He also covers some first-hand accounts of other supernatural activity all over North America. Strange creature sightings in the woods, apparitions, weird happenings. It's a very interesting read, and this topic is terrifying in a way I can't even describe. Antarctica. We've talked about one desert in this video, but what about the largest desert on Earth? One so vast it covers 14 million square kilometers, has basically no life living on it, and regularly hits temperatures below -80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's right, we're talking about Antarctica, the coldest place on Earth. It's been the subject of our storytelling for over 100 years. The lost exhibition of the Belgica at the Mountains of Madness, Journey to the Center of the Earth, with such a large surface area so rarely explored, it was bound to have some cool rabbit holes to dive into. There are so many, in fact, that I literally can't pick, so I'm going to talk about a couple of my favorites. First up is Lake Vostok. In Antarctica, there are 675 subglacial lakes, forever frozen beneath mountains of ice, packed with millions of gallons worth of fresh water. Scientists have been all over these lakes for nearly 100 years, but Lake Vostok is a different beast entirely. You see, Lake Vostok is the largest of these subglacial lakes, located about 2 miles beneath the icy landscape. It was discovered via ground-penetrating radar in the 1990s, and it clocks in at around the same size as Lake Ontario. Because it's insulated beneath so much ice, plus thermal pressure and heat from the Earth's crust, it remains liquid. And it's been liquid for a couple dozen million years, approximately. This drew some heavy scientific attention, and the Russians got on it quickly. They bored the longest ever ice hole, I don't know what to call it, into Lake Vostok, and discovered living microbes. Extremophile life that thrives in harsh, unlivable environments. And these microbes have a genetic makeup that hasn't been seen on Earth for about 500,000 years, aka dinosaur microbes were found in Antarctica. Well, during the process, the drill team lost contact with Russia for 5 days. Their official reasoning was they were too distracted finding dinosaur microbes, which is fair, seems pretty reasonable to me, but this brought about lots of speculation. Did they find something else in the ice? Was the team in trouble? In the government line? What kind of odd stuff might be found inside a million-year-old lake? Should we even be doing it in the first place? What if they unearth a deadly virus, long dormant for millennia, and it kills us all? Another good one just took place recently. In 2025, Ethan Guo, a US pilot and influencer, made headlines for a bold and courageous act, circumnavigating the globe for cancer research. A couple of my friends told me this would be a good story to write about, not because of his altruistic disposition, but because in June of this year, he was stuck in Antarctica. You see, Guo's plane left Chilean airspace, headed for Argentina, when he experienced instrument issues during a bout of particularly bad weather, and he had to divert and make an emergency landing on King George Island in the Antarctic Circle. And personally, I think the guy just wanted to go to Antarctica, but that's just me. I mean, the countries are literally right next to each other. You don't have to fly over the ocean to get between them, but whatever. Anyway, you're not supposed to fly in Antarctica without a permit, let alone land your plane there. So when Guo touched down on the island, specifically in Chilean Air Force territory, he was immediately arrested. This brought up many old questions that many people don't know about, one of which being, why is it illegal to go to Antarctica? Well, technically, it's not illegal if you have permission from basically every country in the world, but that's about as difficult a task as it sounds. All that trouble for one big icy continent with nothing on it? To most, it doesn't make any sense. The most obvious explanation would be military bases. There are no official military bases in Antarctica, as per the treaty we all signed in 1959. Research is allowed, sure, but no established military bases. Now, this sounds good on paper, but anybody with an internet connection knows. World treaties are only good as the word of your government. And most governments aren't interested in honesty. Hot take. One popular loophole is to set up a research station and then have military support in operating it, which 29 countries are currently doing across the Antarctic. And I'd assume they don't want us flying around taking pictures of them breaking international law. But what if there's another reason for all the secrecy? Well, there's plenty of theories on that. I had a friend once, very nice guy, who was a huge conspiracy theorist and card-carrying flat earther. He used to talk about all the dystopian government bases the theory proposed, a giant hole in the ice where the 1% collude to keep us in our lobster trap of a surface world. Do I think that's happening here? No, but I'm sure many people do, because when the world is so intent on hiding something from you, who might it tell you what that something is? Yeti, aliens, a hole to the center of the earth? You can be the judge. Regardless, it's eerie to think about what mysterious secret they might be hiding from us all, and what the implications are. Conservatorships. People don't like being told what to do. If you're from the United States, you're familiar with the many wars we've fought over this exact thing. If you're from another country, you're probably also familiar. This isn't an uncommon sentiment. Slavery, incarceration, subjectification, and the likes are generally frowned upon. But there's one type of indenturement that's still legal in the United States today. And if it weren't for Britney Spears, we probably wouldn't be talking about it. Conservatorships. In the United States, If a person is deemed incapable of running their own life, a court can appoint you a conservator to run it for you. Usually it's a family member, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. All it means is that someone is going to be running your estate, making your decisions, and handling your money however they see fit. There's no expiration date on a conservator, and it's really hard to get out of one once the relationships are established. You're essentially demoted to the backseat driver of your own life. In 2008, Britney Spears was having a really hard time. She'd been a superstar for over a decade, with her first hit, Baby One More Time, topping the billboards when she was only 16 years old. That's incredibly young to be making millions of dollars and losing your privacy. Not to mention, the video was heavily sexualized, which, looking back, is really disgusting, but that's not my point. My point is, the girl was obviously struggling. And in 2008, we saw the full damage her decade of fame inflicted on her. She shaved her head, hit a car with an umbrella, and behind the scenes was committed to a psychiatric hospital multiple times. According to her family, and from the pictures taken by the vultures that are paparazzi, she was obviously unwell. And shortly thereafter, she was placed under a conservatorship. From 2008 to 2018, her dual conservators were her father, Jamie Spears, and a finance manager named Andrew M. Wallet, which is the most comically evil-sounding name I've ever heard. At 27 years old, a working woman was being financially and physically controlled by a team specifically built to essentially siphon money from her. Andrew Wallet? He paid himself $500,000 a year to manage her finances. That's the type of people we're dealing with here. Well, her loyal fan base started to notice her deteriorating state, and the hashtag Free Britney movement was born. Online activists fought for her freedom, and a decade later, a documentary called Framing Britney Spears was released. It came out amidst an intense legal battle between Britney and her conservators, which is a crazy thing to say if and of itself, that you have to hire a lawyer and have a drawn-out legal battle to get your life back. 3 years later, after incredible public backlash and overwhelming support for Britney, she was finally freed from the conservatorship. Today, she has full agency over her finances and legal decisions. Because a young woman dealing with superstardom had mental health issues, she lost control of her life for 13 years, and the courts gave it to two people who had no interest in actually helping her. It just goes to show, not everything legal is moral, and sometimes the most evil things that can be done to a person was written into our legislator. And alright, now onto tier 4, with the first entry being the Kurim case. It's May 2007 in the town of Kurim, Czech Republic. A man is installing a wireless baby monitor for his newborn child when it accidentally tunes into another channel, and what he sees turns his stomach. The image on the small, dim screen is not of his own child, but a young boy, completely naked and bound, stuck in an indescript little box. Police were called to decipher where the signal was coming from, and this landed them at the home of Klara and Katerina Morova. Klara had two sons, who I won't name, aged 9 and 7, and one daughter, aged 13, living in the house. When police arrived at their door, the pair were helpful and allowed them to walk around until they came across a small door. When the sisters were asked to open it, they vehemently refused. Eventually, the fire department had to be called in to burst open the lock on the door. And inside was the baby boy from the baby monitor, covered in vomit and his own excrement. All three children were taken into custody, and the sisters were arrested. The two boys gave their testimony, describing the terrible abuse they had suffered at the hands of Klara and Katerina. And you'd think that would be the end of the story. But something was wrong with this picture. The third child, Annika, when she was questioned, her story was all over the place. Apparently, she wasn't a child of either woman. She was adopted. She regaled them with tales of horrible by a gang of men in fleeing her home country to avoid it, then coming into the care of Clara. She was going blind, had leukemia, and kidney failure, so she allegedly spent most of her time in the hospital. But as it turns out, there was more to Annika than what they believed. One night, she goes missing from the children's home the siblings had been placed in. Later, through DNA evidence, police would discover that the young Annika was not, in fact, a 13-year-old orphan. She was a 33-year-old woman named Barbara Skrlova. Turns out, Barbara was a friend of the sister Katerina, one of the women who was abusing those young boys. She'd been to college, graduated with a degree in drama, had a breast reduction surgery and liposuction, all to further the lie she was a 13-year-old girl. It's also important to mention, she had a pituitary disease that made her look significantly younger and stunted her growth. And she just fled to Norway to avoid custody, living under a new alias. Adam. Okay, so I'm going to be transparent with you guys. This is a very convoluted story. I was very confused when I first read it, so I'll try to make this as simple as possible. First, I'll answer the question on everyone's mind. What the hell is going on? Why? Why did this grown woman pretend to be a child? Who are these sisters in connection with Barbara? Did they know she was a grown woman the whole time? Was she helping to abuse the kids? And here's your answer. So according to what we know, yes, she was abusing the kids. They were all seriously abusing the kids. But everything was rooted in some entirely different, twisted stuff. You see, Barbara, the woman posing as a 13-year-old child, was essentially the daughter of a cult leader, one that the two sisters were associated with. It's believed she was posing as a 13-year-old girl in order to infiltrate the home and keep a watch on the place. The cult was accused of crimes like physical and other kinds of violence we can't talk about on YouTube against children. The group allegedly conducted secret rituals, they forged medical documents, and even were accused of cannibalism at one point. To make it short, these people were beyond sick, and this story is sick. There are so many twists and turns to this case, so many details, and most of them are without context because neither of these sisters or Barbara have ever spoken in detail about the how or the why. But what we do know is there were many disturbing things going on. This was such a groundbreaking case, they wrote a movie loosely inspired by the events we just discussed called The Orphan, which I'm sure many of you have seen. I haven't, but if it's anything like this, I might not watch it. But this case has a ridiculous amount of information to explore. Tons of theories as to what the cult was up to, and it's certainly very haunting to think about. The Yuba County Five. February 24th, 1978, Chico, California. 5 boys. Jack Wett, William Sterling, Jack Madruga, Theodore Weir, and Gary Mathias were all attending a basketball game for the Special Olympics, hosted about 50 miles from where they lived in Yuba City. All 5 were mentally handicapped in some capacity, but all of them could function regularly, so they went to the game unsupervised. It was a big deal for them. A couple of the boys laid out their outfits the night before and begged their parents to wake them up on time. That's how excited they were. After winning the game, which I imagine was an amazing experience for them, they got in their car, a blue 1969 Mercury Matego, and began the long drive home, elated. On the way, it was approaching 10 p.m., and they decided to stop at a nearby convenience store, Bears, to pick up snacks. It was just about to close, and the attendant was a little annoyed, but the 5 hurried inside to buy some chips, sodas, and a carton of milk, and quickly left. The attendant watched them get in their car and drive off. Back in Yuba, the parents of the 5 men waited for their return. The time slowly crawled by, hour after hour, with no sign of the boys. The parents figured It was just them getting carried away at the game or hanging out afterwards, so they went to bed, expecting them by morning. But they never returned home. A missing persons bulletin went out, and police searched the road from Yuba to Chico. No sign of the five. Their car was not on the road, which was strange. Maybe they'd spent the night at a hotel in Chico, or were staying at a friend's place in Yuba, or maybe they'd broken down and were stranded on the side of the road somewhere out of sight. No one knew. In those first few days, investigators were relying on their educated guesses and instincts to find the five, deciding which roads to search, which stores, which locations, which essentially was a guessing game. Then, a few days later, in Plumas National Forest near Quincy, California, park rangers alerted authorities to a blue 1969 Mercury Montego parked in the woods. It had been sitting there for at least a day or two, but he didn't find it important because during the winter months, people often parked in that area for ski trips. Looking over the contents of the car, the men had finished most of their snacks, so they had been driving that entire time. But the location was odd. You see, Plumas National Forest is about 70 miles north of Chico. Yuba City is 50 miles south, meaning they'd driven 130 miles off course, in the wrong direction, on roads they'd never seen before. The parents found this very odd, as none of the five men had ever been to that area before. More curiously, the car had no signs of being driven up a mountain pass, which indicated that the driver, Madruga, had either been very careful or someone else had driven the car. They attempted to search, but by this time, a snowstorm had come through and rescuers were getting stuck in the heavy snowfall, so any effort to find the boys would have to wait. The snow didn't lift until months later. Finally, in June of that year, when the snow began to melt, they were able to continue the search, and shortly after, they'd find the boys. Two bodies on opposite sides of the road, Jack Madruga and William Sterling. They'd succumbed to hypothermia, and from the looks of things, one had succumbed to sleep, the last stage of hypothermia, while the other stayed nearby to watch over him. Both looked like they were headed in the direction of a nearby trailer, and in that trailer, Ted Wehere's body remained, lying on the bed. His feet were gangrenous, and he most likely had died of a combination of starvation and hypothermia. He was 200 pounds lighter, with gangrenous feet and a full beard, which investigators estimate he lived for about 3 months after going missing. There were food stores in the trailer, a fireplace that was never used, and lots of matches, also unused. His body was covered in 8 sheets from head to toe, which was odd. Judging by the state of him, he would not have been capable of wrapping himself up in that manner. Someone else had to be with him. And also found in the trailer a pair of tennis shoes belonging to Matthias. The rations that were opened with a P38 can opener, which only Matthias or Madruga would have been capable of doing given their previous military service. The theory goes that sometime before the men went missing, a snowcat had gone down the road they were found along, headed toward the trailer. The snowcat cleared the snow from the trailer roof so it wouldn't collapse, then went home. It's believed the 5 men followed its tracks trying to find civilization. 2 of them died en route to the trailer, and the 2 other men found it. Jack Huet's bones were discovered by his own father about a mile away from the trailer, and the body of Gary Matthias has never been found. The odd circumstances involved in the disappearance, how they got lost, what they were doing, and how the car remained intact is still hotly debated. But the Yuba County 5 remains one of the most mysterious cases in American history. There are tons of theories on why they did what they did and how it all happened. But regardless of what you think, it's incredibly sad to think about their final moments out in the cold. The boys on the tracks. In the early morning of August 23rd, 1987, a local conductor was operating as usual, barreling down the railway near Alexander, Arkansas, when he spotted something horrifying. Two figures were lying on the tracks up ahead, close but far enough away to sound his horn and draw their attention. He signaled to them over and over, wordlessly begging them to move, but for some reason, they wouldn't. As he got closer, he identified the figures. Two boys, unperturbed, partially covered by a green plastic tarp. Maybe they hadn't heard him. Maybe they were sleeping, or injured, or simply weren't listening. Scared and panicking, he attempted to stop the train, trying to give the boys an opportunity to escape. Just a second more to realize what was happening, but it was no use. They did not move, and the train ran them down. Police and EMS were called to the scene, but the boys were already dead, macerated by the wheels of the enormous locomotive. The bodies were taken in for autopsy and identification. The two boys were 16-year-old Don Henry and 17-year-old Kevin Ives, two best friends, whose parents described them as inseparable. Police contacted the families, and naturally, both were devastated. A thorough investigation began in the coming months, and by thorough, I mean insanely incompetent, obtuse, and possibly obstructive. For instance, State Medical Examiner Fahmy Malik ruled their deaths as accidental. According to him, the boys had smoked marijuana sometime in the day and had become sleepy. So obviously they decided to take a nap on the train tracks. Then when the multi-ton locomotive came barreling down the tracks, shaking the very earth beneath their bodies, they simply couldn't wake up. In other words, the guy was lying. I'm obligated for professional reasons to say allegedly after making a statement like that, so here it goes. He was allegedly lying because allegedly that doesn't make any fucking sense. Nobody in the history of the world has ever taken 3 puffs of a joint and fallen asleep on a train track. No one. In fact, that might be the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And we just did a story about how the Finnish government put a guy under hypnosis to find a potential suspect. That's how obviously false this line of thinking is. And shock to no one, when it was publicized at the time, a total of 0 people believed this theory, choosing instead to believe that their local medical examiner was either an idiot, a liar, or both, allegedly. After the release of the official cause of death, the families were reasonably unhappy, so they requested another autopsy. That's when they discovered what really happened to the two best friends. One had been stabbed in the back, the other had been fatally bludgeoned. Now, that makes more sense, but the fact that the medical examiner's office had allegedly made up the stupidest story I've ever heard, well, it raised suspicion. What had the investigators been doing all this time? Now that it was ruled a homicide, they'd need to build a case, and quickly, to catch the killer. In fact, come to think of it, where was the evidence they'd collected from the scene? Well, most of their evidence, including the boys' clothing, was sent to the wrong location for testing. And remember that bright green tarp I was talking about earlier? The one that the train conductor had seen, partially obscuring their bodies? Yeah, according to investigators, that tarp just never existed. Apparently, it was never at the crime scene and had supposedly disappeared into the wind like Mary Poppins. As we all know, important pieces of evidence are likely to go missing when absolutely nothing is being covered up. Another thing to note, there was no marijuana in their systems. When the autopsies were conducted by actual people with eyes and brains, they concluded that Dr. Malik did not use reliable scientific testing to determine basically anything. And in fact, the whole manner in which he examined the bodies was functionally bizarre. Over the coming months, several witnesses came forward, claiming they had information on what happened before the boys were killed. Factors like when, where, why, and how were soon to be answered. I can't imagine how the families felt during all of this, on the precipice of real answers. So, what did these witnesses say? Well, a whole lot of nothing, because several of the witnesses slated to testify all turned up dead. You heard me correctly. Dead. All of them by mysterious, random, unpredictable means. Most of these were written off as normal deaths. I'm talking Tony shot himself 2 times in the back of the head. It was an accident kind of deaths. And on top of that, a judge asked the government agencies who were investigating the case to release the case files to the families. Those agencies were, well, get ready for this, the DEA and Homeland Security. Sure. Anyway, they were asked to release the files, and they essentially said, nope, I'm good, and refused. After weeks of back and forth, they finally gave up, and the files went conveniently missing. Needless to say, this case has many theories revolving around what exactly was going on. I think we all have an idea on what might have gone on, but here are some of the popular theories. The first one is that the police were involved in some kind of drug operation, hence the DEA. The boys saw something they shouldn't have, got killed, and to cover up their tracks, the local government orchestrated an elaborate cover-up. Definitely can't be this one. Others believe it was simple incompetence on the side of law enforcement and intense bureaucracy that impeded the case. And of course, there's the extraterrestrial option, but I think I'm more in line with a different theory. Anyway, there is so much more to this case, so many more theories, and I really encourage you all to go check this one out. It's absolutely baffling, and I'd really love to hear what you guys think. So comment down below and share your own theories. And all right, guys, that wraps up the Rabbit Hole Iceberg. This one was a little bit different than usual. I mean, most of my icebergs are usually all disturbing, but this one kind of had some more lighthearted conspiracies or, rabbit holes, like the glitter conspiracy or, cave exploring. That one wasn't really that light. But there's, Britney Spears. This just had a different kind of array to it, not just all true crime. And so comment down below if you enjoyed that and let me know. And I'd like to make more videos like this in the future. And the last one, oh my God, the boys on the tracks. That is one of the most insane stories and rabbit holes I've gone down. Very, very weird stuff. So yeah, like I said, do your own research and very, very interesting. And I enjoyed all the rabbit holes in today's video. Let me know if you'd like to see the internet rabbit hole iceberg explained, maybe in the future. Comment that down below and let me know if you'd like to see that. And I appreciate you guys watching to the end of the video. If you did, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and consider joining in our Patreon for early access to every single video, uncensored content, and the weekly Snook Show where I ramble about stuff, and it's a fun time. So consider joining the Patreon for $5 a month. Hey, it's a bang for your buck. It's basically new content every single day. But yeah, thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. This was the Rabbit Hole Iceberg, and this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.